been far too long since going live. Actually, I think it was last week, so I guess it hasn't been that long. And I've had an absolutely awesome week. Some really, really good conversations with folks. Really great podcast that I pushed live this week. Tim Schurer joined me on the podcast for episode 289, talking about the secret society of success. Yesterday on the podcast that pushed live was with Lee Benson. We've talked about the methodology that he's created from a mind, which is the mind methodology he and his team put together. I'm a certified business coach in the mind methodology, certified business performance coach in the mind methodology, and really excited to have that as one of the offerings and the capabilities that we have inside the business now. Want to get into a discussion around operating systems. So if you have hung around me long enough, you know that when I do something, I go all in to the details. And sometimes this can be looked at as analysis paralysis. I don't think it's analysis paralysis. I also don't think it's overthinking things, but that's me. Like, I want to know if I'm going to be talking to people about something, I want to make sure, I want to know that I have a level of expertise relative to that specific topic or subject. So over the course of the past bit, I've gone pretty deep on things like OKRs, the Doer book, or if you go back, it comes from his experience with Andy Grove over at Intel. So OKRs, objectives and key results. Also, the Gino Wickman book, Traction, which most people would know as part of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or Entrepreneur's Operating System. And then if you go way, way, way back in time, there was Managing by Objectives, which I believe was a Drucker thing. So we have all these systems that are out there. And one of the things that was pretty cool that Lee had shared in the recording that we did is each organization has an operating system. It's just a matter of whether or not it's intentional or not. Is it intentional? Was it designed with intentional or some level of intentional, or did it end up creating itself organically? One way to test if you've got an operating system that's created itself organically is, do people have the capability to make decisions out in the field? What level of decision making can they make out in the field? What level of comfort do they have in making those decisions out in the field? Out in the field means wherever they work, day to day. What kind of authority, autonomy do they have in making decisions? And Lee Cockrell had a session earlier this week that I thought was really good as well. He talked about the Ritz-Carlton, and how at the Ritz-Carlton, each employee, I think it's each employee, each member of the staff has the ability to spend up to $1,000 to make the guest day. And I might be saying that wrong, but there's this level of autonomy. They've gone through training. They understand what that means, and people won't abuse it. They've given the opportunity for them to make it right, make the guest day. One of my favorite stories that Lee has shared a number of times and included in his book, his first book, which I think it was Customer Rules. I'll have to go back. Lee, I don't remember the name of the first book, but it was where you had your phone number in there, and then I called you, and we met for coffee 8 months before launching Catalyst Sale. And we met at a Starbucks. And there are a couple of stories that are in the book. One of the stories in the book is around the idea of that Bill Marriott impressed on him, which is you must like flies. If you have flies in your kitchen, you have flies in your hotel, you must like flies. Because if you didn't, you would do something about it. So there are often times where I ask myself the question, do I like flies? And that's around any of the flies that are circulating around me. The other story that's in the book, if I go back and remember right, it was, and it might have come from Lee's podcast. Lee has a podcast, Creating Disney Magic. If you don't listen to it, check it out. It's 12 to 15 minutes each week. Some really good episodes. You'll notice the co-host on there, Jody Mayberry. He is the one who joins me on the Find My Catalyst podcast periodically. In Lee's podcast or the book, he talked about the idea of being in a restaurant and it being cold outside and there being a draft that's coming through the door. And when I think he or Priscilla or someone had asked the waiter to close the door because of the draft, the response was, well, no, we can't close the door. It's policy that we keep the door open. And I might be paraphrasing here a bit. Be careful about the policies that you've inserted inside your organization that get in the way of your team being able to make effective decisions while out in the field, while working with customers. And one of the ways that I do this is by having a set of guiding principles. A set of guiding principles that are extremely important to me. My guiding principles, and many of you have seen these before, it's understand the customer better than they understand themselves. Deliver the solution in the context of what is important to the customer. Set expectations and execute flawlessly. Execute. Don't limit yourself based on preconceived notions, and don't make your problem, our problem, the customer's problem. Don't turn that into the customer's problem. These guiding principles allow people, when operating in the field, think of decentralized command, getting information out further, working in extended teams. Stanley McChrystal's book, Team of Teams, is really good on this. Jocko Willink has a number of things in his book around extreme ownership that talk about the importance of decentralized command. But if your team has a set of guiding principles or framework that they work under, then or work within, then they have flexibility in making decisions while they're out there. And now the team can play loose rather than tight. If they continue to have to come back to you to figure out if something is okay or what the thought process is on something, then you're likely not doing a very good job communicating to the team, or you're potentially changing the way that you look at things. So what does this have to do with the secret society of success? What does this have to do with operating systems? What does this have to do with mind methodology? What does it have to do with community? Which are the couple of the things that I put in the slide to kick this off. Well, number one, Tim Shore, when we were talking on the podcast, highlighted the importance of and I'm going to put words in his mouth, but the operator who's doing the work in the background to make sure that the mission is successful, to keep things focused. They're not necessarily the visionary. They're not the one who is going to put the cape on and be the superhero. They're not the one who's driving the car. They're the one behind the scenes that makes the work work. There's a lot of value in those people who are behind the scenes, who are making the work work. The operators that are inside your organization, the operators who will help keep things focused, keep things on track, keep things moving forward in a way that makes sense. If you have not read Tim's book, and it comes out, I think, next week, make sure you pick up a copy of it. It is The Secret Society of Success. You can listen to the podcast episode that we did by listening to episode 289 of the Find My Catalyst podcast. Okay, so if we know that we have operators inside the organization, we understand the importance of having operators inside the organization from a people perspective, one of the other things that we can do is help enable the organization from a systems and process perspective. So let's talk about system. So MBOs. MBOs are a really good system, managing by objectives, management by objectives. So, or management by objectives. So people have an objective, they go out there and they do the work related to the objectives. And you see these things in performance reviews. You have certain objectives that you have in your performance reviews. This has happened since the Drucker days. So a long, long time, we've had these objectives. Sometimes they're listed in job descriptions, sometimes they're listed in the performance review, but we have these objectives. And what we do is we say, did you hit the objective? Yes or no? Check, Check or not check? Yes or no? Um, what happens if the objectives are not aligned with the broader objectives of the business? Well, that's one of the challenges that happens with OKRs when poorly implemented inside organizations. Now, if you've read the book, Measure What Matters, Measure What Matters, you understand the process of implementing OKRs inside an organization. You understand the importance of starting with leadership first, getting this culture across the leadership team related to OKRs before you roll it out across the organization. Yet I have seen it, I've witnessed it multiple times where we roll out OKRs inside the organization and everybody is kind of left to their own devices. And we wonder, why the heck are we actually delivering on our objectives? Our OKRs look really good. We've hit whatever we defined as key results, but the business is not hitting, the business is not moving in the direction that we want it to. Ultimately, that comes down to a leadership challenge inside organizations. And that is the problem that I am excited about solving for, related to the certification I've gone through on mind methodology. Now, EOS is another operating system that's out there. And all of these operating systems have pros and cons. It's important to find the right one for your business at the right time. To Lee's point that he brought up in the podcast, know that you will have one. It could either be created with intention or might happen organically. As an operator, I would suggest that you do it with a level of intention because you want to get yourself closer to the point or move yourself toward execution. So, from an EOS perspective, again, really good book. Gino Wickman's book on traction is phenomenal. There's some really good stuff in there. He refers back to a number of those who have come before. And I think it's Newton, and there was somebody else who said it before him, but I only see as far as I see because I stand on the shoulders of giants. You know, my favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes, which is, there's nothing new but what has been forgotten. There's nothing new but what has been forgotten, which is the Marie Antoinette quote. We, we see as far because we stand on the shoulders of giants. We, um, things that are new to us may not necessarily be new to the world. So have an operating system, have an operator who can implement that operating system, and operate with a high level of intent. That is the message for this Friday. Things are going well. I had a great chance to meet up with a bunch of folks from the local pavilion chapter. MJ and Joe are doing some amazing things as co-chairs within the chapter. It is so cool to, one, be able to meet with people in person, two, be able to have an amazing conversation around a dinner table, three, realize how much you can learn and how much we all learn from each other based on levels of experience. So if there are three takeaways from this video, this conversation, number one, it's important to have an operator. The operator will help things keep going in the background, and they don't need to be up front and center. They don't need to be the big name in lights. That's not the thing for them. And Tim talked about that in the secret society of success. Your operator should have an operating system that you implement inside your organization, whatever one you want, OKRs, MBOs, traction from an EOS perspective, or the one that I've adopted, which is the MIND methodology, understanding what your most important number is, understanding the drivers that impact that most important number, influence that most important number, and understanding how you're leveraging each of those drivers so that you can create better alignment inside your organization, have a higher level of clarity and focus so that your teams get better at execution. And oh, by the way, have a layer of accountability based on the process to help keep things moving forward or correct when you need to, so that you have a high level of integrity inside your organization. People do what they say they're going to do and are extremely comfortable saying no to distraction when it comes up. So have an operator, have an operating system, and make sure you lean on your community, because there's so much we can learn from our community. That is 15 minutes. I might actually post this thing as a podcast episode. We'll see. That is 15 minutes. I hope you have an amazing Friday the 13th and an even better Saturday the 14th. Thanks for joining on and listening to this. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you.